What's up, guys? Catching up on a few videos that I didn't make over the week. Didn't have time, whether the market was too busy during the day or I had dad stuff to do after the market was closed. Just didn't have time to make them. I want to talk about PIXY. I'll make another video about FEMY on Friday, but we'll focus on PIXY. If you saw my last video on FEMY, you'll hear me talking about what I call sympathy next day, which is when you have like an extreme kind of black swanning event happen in the small cap space, typically when the market gets stronger, and then you get successive tickers right after it that seem to be doing the same thing. Um, but what's one interesting thing about them is they get weaker and weaker, right? So with RNAS, the first crazy, huge gap into a crazy up halty squeeze into the offering. FEMI day one, which had a huge gap, um, but didn't really give that up halty insane strength that a lot of people might have been expecting. But still held up, swiped high day a few times. And of course, we all know what happened Friday, but this would be the second pump, and I want to go to PIXY. So PIXY, I saw this pop in the AH, which is very similar to what the last two tickers did, right? Well, I mean, not RNAS, but it's what FEMI did, and I saw PIXY do it. I'm like, oh, people are going to think after RNAS and FEMI that PIXY with this type of action is going to do the same thing. So I was during the after hours of this day, which is the 26th. That's my Discord stuff. Go over my trades. Here's my chart execution. I'll go over it. I said it during the after hours. I'm like, if PIXY holds up, people are 100% going to think it's going to do what RNAS and FEMI did. A sub $1 stock making a huge gap. So it's following the same pattern, right? If that happens, it's likely to be super weak. I'm hoping we could get back above one. So I was making this comment when it pulled back here. I was like, man, I hope it makes another pump push, right? Get above these highs. And then, oh, sorry, I'm hiding it. And then, last like I said, it might even be a pre-market short. So we'll go. I'm always so bad at hiding these. So I was like, man, I saw the after hours pump, saw the pullback. I'm like, man, I hope it gets back above this high, makes a big push, tricks all the retail into thinking that it's going to be another big squeezer, and then and this is the third pump, and each successive pump gets weaker and weaker. So I was super bearish on this thing, right? So um, I wake up, I see the first up only squeeze through the previous high. I'm like, great. I'm not shorting here, but I'm like, great. That's exactly what I want to see. And then I see the pullback, and I'm like, all right, what levels do we have up here? We have, this 113 and this 112. I'm like, I would love a soak, come down to support, and I would like a high volume rotation. And like I said, I was almost already looking for a pre-market short because I was like, people might think this is going to be some crazy squeezer, and they might just trick people out even before market open. So I saw up only. I saw the pullback. I saw this initiation. This topped out at this lower high, so now we have a very, painted lower high structure. And I'm like, I'm going to wait for a big volume push, and then I'm going to try to read some tape at the top, see if I see any weakness, see if I see hidden sellers, or a bunch of orders going through the tape, and it's just not moving, or the bid's dropping. So I see this push, and then I see it stall in the 120s, and I'm already seeing this stall right here on this candle. And I'm like, you know what? My risk is really tight. Let me put a starter here, and if I see more weakness, I'll just add more. So I put one here. We get a second push, comes up right to high day, refuses to go. The ask refuses to give up. It pulls back. I see this volume get lower. So we're losing volume on like a third push, so I add even more. So I was like, man, I think they might just long trap it right away, fake a breakout of new highs, and maybe we start getting a lot of weakness into the open, and then maybe ideally it stays heavy and it goes straight down. That's kind of what my thesis was. And I saw the crack here, and I got like confirmation. I got this big crack here, kind of forming a clear double top, and I was like, great, it's going the way I want. I'm not covering here, but it's going the way I want. But then I saw this rotation happen, and I'm just like, this is already not good. Let me just risk right near high day. And it goes and stops me out. So if we go to let's see, Execution. Here's my first short right here. Here's my squeeze out right here. And then I'm like, okay, trade one didn't work, but I had like a 119 average, risking high day, so this was a tight risk short. A lot of times I'll have those reads and it initially seems really heavy and I'll get in and hey, sometimes it doesn't work. And the times it does work, this could be, a big, 20%, 30% fade. And if it doesn't work, I take a 4 cent loss, that type of thing. So now it pushes and it starts getting really, really grindy up here. And I was like, you know what? I'm just going to wait for market open, right? Wait for the market open volatility to come in. But again, I'm super bearish, right? So market open, I usually don't short right at 9:30. I see a push, breaks high day by 1 cent, struggles. I see this push, and once this starts to get really heavy, I'm like, I'm just already going to start in. I'm going to short into 130s. I had a 132 average. Um, it's like they might just pull this right away, right? Um, Again, because I know this is a third pump, I'm just super, super bearish going into this, especially 2 days in a row of the same tickers making big, big moves, squeezing shorts, being hyper aggressive. Um, it's like the perfect time to short a stock. The perfect time to short a stock is after multiple days of really, really crazy things happening. Because shorts are afraid, longs are trying to get in on the next push, that type of thing. Um, and then I did something that in retrospect was pretty dumb. I saw the pullback and I saw the volume. I'm like, this is big manipulated volume, but I'm very bearish on this thing. Um, and I saw this quick dump with a clear soak at 120. There's a clear hidden buyer at 120 that wouldn't let this go. And then when I saw the rotation back up, I was like, oh, I'm gonna be really smart, put my risk at break even, and then wait for the high day squeeze and try to react and try to get a better average, right? Well, what happened? I got stopped out. I got stopped out. Oops. Got stopped out. It tapped high day, and then within probably half, like 1 second, just dumped 20 cents, and I had to chase down lower, right? So very big brain of me. If you want to see someone who played it a lot better with very similar entries, at least up here, go check out Morg Trades. Uh, I imagine he just puts his risk a little higher so he doesn't get faked down on these moves. But yeah, big brain time is for me just messing up my average on a stock I was super bearish on. Um, and then it pulls back here, and then we get a down halt into some massive weakness. And now whenever I see manipulated tickers give like a down halt followed by tons of weakness, I'm always thinking about like how are shorts and longs positioning themselves, right? If shorts see a massive high day clear out into a down halt, they're going to want to chase this weakness, right? And longs are just going to stop themselves out because, I mean, who's dip buying at deep support down here? Like nobody. So you have this imbalance of longs and shorts. And this is kind of, if you remember my video on BJDX, I talked about under VWAP manipulation and fake VWAP resistance, right? I talked about that. So, I saw it bounce up the VWAP here, fail, bounce up the VWAP here, fail. But I see clear soaking on the tape with these higher lows. And higher lows can be bearish. Like you could get big cracks through higher lows, but it's often later. Um, so and my average is real bad. I had like my average was like low 120s, and I'm like, man, dude, like I have this like kind of bad average. It's a stronger market, and I see this like under VWAP soak. I was like, you know what? I'm gonna cover, and I'm gonna long because I saw the third bounce off of support here, and I'm like, you know what? They'll probably attack that VWAP liquidity. I'll cover, and I'll go long down here. I'll go long. Um, and I'll wait for some type of like VWAP squeeze, right? And I see VWAP reject here. I see the higher lows hold. I see it come up, and then I see this next push. And I thought this was gonna go like 125, maybe 130s. Like I thought it would give like a big swipe and then come back down like this. But what was happening is they were putting up these like 80, 50, 80,000 share ass like every 1 cent. Every 1 cent had thicker and thicker ass, and they were letting them get it eaten through, but there's no follow through. So I thought like, because I saw this lower high, this 119, and I saw VWAP, I was like, okay, I want at least 120, 121 on the long, but it was so thick, so heavy, and when this started to knock go right here. I was like, you know what? I was like, I'm so bearish on this stock, but I'm trying to like, you know, trying to cover my bad position, my bad average short early, trying to try to like scalp along for 5-10% and flip again. I'm like, screw it, man. I'm just gonna like load back in. I actually just I saw it come down under VWAP, shorted uh shorted some of my shares, saw this push fail, shorted more of my shares, and then I saw it come down to these higher lows, and I'm like, man, um, I'll show you here. Um, and there's a lot of stuff I was going to talk about, but I don't know. You can pause this and read it if you want. um, but yeah, here's me talking about the under VWAP paint. Here's me talking about the higher lows. I'm like, if these higher lows crack, it could crack really hard, right? Because a lot of times you'll get painted higher lows, and then you get a fat crack, which is what FEMI was doing the day before. But FEMI ended up just holding those higher lows and squeezing high day, which happens sometime. Um, but in this case, I was like, dude, I actually think they're going to just crack these higher lows. So I'm shorting. I added into this sell off into support, and I thought it was going to go here, so I added the rest of my shares here, gave a BS little bounce, and then cracked. So this is a good one. This is like you really want to track, and actually have this in the Discord. I have, um, what I call sympathy next day, right? And here's me putting SLNO and BNOX. Funny enough, PIXY did this back in June. AHI had a massive up only market open squeeze after a sell off. PIXY up only squeeze after a sell off comes right to high day, which was a few cents above this candle. Up only squeeze. AHI just did this exact same pattern the day before. PIXY's doing it the next day. Comes like within 2% from highs. And then I just see a fat seller up here. Just a massive. I remember shorting this in the 310s, and it just went straight down. It's the same concepts. And then, yeah, here's RNAS and the FEMI and the PIXY, right? Same concept. I always track those. I always track, like, hey, remember 3 months ago when, like, this play happened, and it was all, like, the exact same price point, exact same price action, exact same type of manip? Um, yeah, it's funny. They'll just use that, you know, use that, psychology of, every retail trader is going to think this is going to happen. And that's why I said some of those could be the best shorts, right? That's why I was aggressive on FEMI on that video I made. That's why I was aggressive here on PIXY. The way I managed this was, it was okay, but it could have been a lot better. Kind of messed up my averages and tried to do too many smart things, which ended up not really working. Last thing I want to talk about with FEMI, big down only sell off, and I always, as a short seller, believe it or not, on manipulated tickers, sometimes it's all about context, but sometimes like when you just see nothing but lower highs and lower lows, and it's just relentless, like lower high, unless it's like a dilution fade or some type of like insider dump or something like that. Like a lot of times, lower highs and lower lows can be very strong. Now that doesn't mean it's gonna squeeze the high day or um, that type of thing. But I get a little nervous sometimes when I'm in a position I just see nothing but lower highs, lower lows, because if you think about it from a retail perspective, like any long who's buying dips is getting shaken out. So there's like essentially zero longs in the money because it's just relentless support cracking, and then any short is continuously in the money. So it creates this massive imbalance of too many sellers and not enough buyers in the stock. And a lot of times on manipulated stuff, market makers will come in and they'll come in and squeeze the backside. And the reason this, again, it is a stronger market, so you see these types of moves. But the reason these types of moves happen is because it was just it's like only shorts in the stock essentially, and like no long. So it's so easy to initiate like a hyper aggressive backside squeeze. Now I used to think every time I saw one of these, I used to just think it was going to go to highs and this was untradeable. But what I learned was you could often just look left at some key levels they might be targeting. I mean, the obvious one here being VWAP and some of these lower highs. And if I'll just start reading the tape. Like I saw this, I saw the pullback, and I saw 109, 110 get really, really heavy. And a lot of times, like that's all the liquidity that they have. So I took a secondary short um, at 109 up here, and then since it followed the 1 minute 9, 1 minute 20, I covered a partial at the 1 minute 50 because I'm like that's going to be um, a likely support level. Sadly, I was holding for an after hours fade. As you see, it faded after hours. I was holding for a fade back into like the point eights, like the low point eights. But then they HC Wainwright, whoever did this, this candle happened, and I saw the volume come in. I saw it come in at 103, 104, and I got out at like just in the middle of this candle because I'm like, oh man, they're gonna do a secondary squeeze, the 115s or 120s, and it's like, nope, they just did a little pop and then they faded at 20%. So they got me there. It'd be like that sometimes. So yeah. So yeah, Femi, want to try to keep these videos not like crazy long. But yeah, so short that didn't work. Short that I mismanaged. The short that I covered at support went long, made like 7 cents on the long. And then once it came back under VWAP, I was like, I just went back to my bearish bias. I was like, you know what? I actually did, I was like green on it because I did, make money on the short and some money on the long, and then I just started loading in. And once all these little fake initiations like wouldn't go, I saw the higher lows and I was like, let me just short into it, and I just put my alert below 103 or whatever that low was, and got a big crack, and uh, took some partials and started. As my last partial, I was actually waiting for a 0.75 crack, and it came right to 0.76, and it rotated back up, and I just got out. I was like, you know what, that's a good enough. Especially because I hate it when my average isn't like, my average is 132. I feel great, but my average here was like 112. Like it was, like I was like adding into support here. Uh, so I usually get a little more jumpy with my covers when I know my average isn't super great. Then yeah, here's my last little short. I saw the hidden seller at 109, 110, got really heavy, cover, and then sadly I final covered before the after hours pullback. But yeah, hopefully that was informative. PIXY was I guess one of the main lessons of this video is forming a thesis based around things that have recently happened, right? Especially when the market gets strong, really extreme manipulative moves are happening, and they tend to get repeated often to with an opposite effect, right? So that's really the main lesson. It's really like a strong market stuff. There's examples from June. There's examples from April and May. There's any time where like the market was like being a little stronger. So hope that was a good vid. More info on Discord comes soon. Pretty soon, maybe this week. Maybe early next week. So okay, hope that's a good one. See ya.